Hey guys, today we're driving the 2022 Audi RS e-tron GT. This is an exciting one. 160 grand as tested, 590 horsepower, 637 horsepower in overboost, and it has a 232 mile range. Or at least that's what it's rated at. Chances are you'll get a little bit more out of it than that. All-wheel drive. Rear motor has a 2-speed gearbox. The front motor has a 1-speed gearbox. This is very similar to the Porsche Taycan. I haven't driven a Taycan, so I have no real comparison metrics between that and this, but very excited to show you guys this car today, give you guys some first impressions. Let's hop inside and start it up. You just hop in, it turns on, you're pretty much ready to rock and roll. Wireless Apple CarPlay, Android Auto. We've got some ambient lighting that you can see at night. I have it set to change between different drive modes. It'll go red for dynamic, which is my favorite drive mode. We have adaptive air suspension. Just a ton of power from this thing. This is, I think, the best sounding electric car that I have driven. And I wish everyone would make electric cars sound cool. And I think this e-tron really nails it. We'll drive this in a little bit. Let's walk you around this a little bit more while we still have daylight. On the outside, I think this car is absolutely stunning. These wheels, this has carbon ceramic brakes. There is a $20,000 package that I will list in the description for you guys. We have Goodyear Performance summer tires, and check out this front end. This blacked out new grille from Audi is kind of part of their new RS design language, and I kind of like it, especially in this gray. Very cool looking headlights. We have 2 charge ports, one on either side. So if it's more convenient to use the driver's side charge port in your garage or the passenger's charge port, you can choose, which is kind of nice. I found that to be very useful this week. We have carbon fiber mirror caps, a carbon roof. Ooh, a lot of good stuff. And look at this little design element right here to release some high pressure in the wheel well at speed. I think this is just a gorgeous Audi sedan. Weighs in a little over 5,100 pounds, so it is not light, but it's actually only just a little bit heavier than the Audi RS6 Avant we tested a couple months ago. It is a bit of a tight cabin, but it's tight in the sense that it's going to keep you well bolstered in the seat for all the G's that you'll be pulling in this thing. The materials, the interior finishing, I don't know if it's all worth $160,000, but it's really, really nice in here. This is an absolutely gorgeous place to be. We have a lot of traditional controls, a lot of physical touch buttons. We have actual vents. Look at this. Look at this. Check this out. You can move them with your hand. You don't have to move them with a screen. Revolutionary. Mirror controls, a little knob, and oh, it's just fantastic. This is just a car that happens to be electric, and I think it's a pretty good car at that. Let's show you the trunk. Daylight is fading. Not as crazy about the taillights. We have a okay sized trunk. Space for a charge cable back there. A little bit of room underneath, but overall, I mean, this is kind of a, I don't know, you'd expect this to be a sportback with a tailgate. It isn't, but the rear seats do fold down. There are definitely some concessions being made in terms of practicality for the design of this e-tron. Honestly, I'm not too mad about it. We have a very small cockpit compared to the rest of the body. You can see just how far out and how wide these fenders come out. These taillights are a little bit overboard for my taste, but they do look pretty cool when you turn the turn signals on. And check this out. We also get a pretty good sized frunk, so I think that kind of makes up for the lack of cargo in some situations. You have a button right here to pop the trunk, and then check this out for the front trunk. Just hit that once, and you've got a little release. Where's that? There we go. Pretty good size. You could fit all the groceries that you need in there. Very nice lightweight hood. Okay, that's a Walkaround. Let's take this thing for a drive. I mentioned that this is the coolest sounding electric car that I've heard. Well, basically it just reminds me of the movie Tron. And of course this is called the Audi e-tron GT RS. Quite a name. I think Audi's nomenclature for their electric cars is getting a little bit confusing, but that's okay. If you know, you know. This is a really nice infotainment too. Pretty responsive. Most of the controls are not hidden in the screen. We have physical buttons for climate control. Look at this. And a little screen that shows you what's going on. Nice toggle switches too. They feel good. You raise the temperature, it turns red. You lower the temperature, it turns blue. Nice little integration there with ambient lighting. Heated and cooled seats, which you can turn on at the same time. And I'm glad manufacturers are bringing that back. And of course, your drive select button. Traction control off button. Parking sensor button. I love all these buttons. Amazing. Okay. Little drive toggle there. You can hear things kind of fire up, so to speak. Definitely would recommend headphones for this video if you're not already watching with them on. There are some subtle noises that this makes that may not come through your phone's speakers. All right, let's go for a drive. See what I mean? Oh, that's special. I don't care what you think about electric cars, that is a cool noise. My favorite way to drive this car this week has been in Dynamic. Even though this has adaptive adjustable suspension, the ride quality is fantastic in all modes, and Dynamic is a totally dailyable drive mode. I really like it. It enhances the sound just a little bit. If you want things to quiet down, you can select comfort or efficiency, and a lot of that noise goes away. But I think Dynamic is the way we're going to drive most of the time in this video. Silly speeds, 0 to 60, and just hurts your brain. Not as quick as the Taycan Turbo S. I think this kind of slots in and is the equivalent to the Taycan Turbo, but and it's priced a little bit less expensively too. We do have paddle shifters on the back of the wheel to control the regenerative braking, but if I'm being honest, it doesn't really do much. You can kind of choose between coast or just a little bit of regenerative braking off throttle. Audi and Porsche have the philosophy that one pedal driving is not in their wheelhouse or menu of options, and they want you to use the brake pedal. And honestly, I'm not sure how I felt about that to begin with. Philosophically, I really like the idea of one pedal driving, but after driving this for the last couple days, the brake pedal feel is nice, and you get used to it. It's just like driving a normal car. I'm okay with it. It's perfectly fine. It wouldn't bother me one bit. This is just a phenomenal car to drive. It's really satisfying. The only thing, I don't know if I can wrap my head around the $160,000 price tag, because the performance here is impressive, but for the price, it kind of feels about on par with maybe a Tesla Model 3 performance in terms of straight line speed. Of course, handling, interior materials, fit, finish, feel, literally everything else about the car is twice as good, but if not more. But in terms of outright acceleration, I'm not being completely blown out of the water. My socks are still on. My socks have not been knocked off. 0 to 60, that is impressive. This does have launch control. Come to a stop, hit the brake, throttle, and it just pounds off the line. And you can feel that 1-2 shift from the rear axle too. That's kind of cool. A sensation that I've never felt in an electric car before. This Alcantara wheel is just about the perfect shape. Narrow right at 9 3, and has nice thick spots with a flat bottom everywhere else. Driving this car around, you feel like you're in something special. This feels like something from the future. And with all the sounds that it makes and the level of acceleration and performance that it has, it really does, I don't know, it just kind of delivers on an experience that's very unique in the electric car market. All of my inputs, all of my controls are very satisfying. I like the steering weight. There's not a ton of feel, but it weights up beautifully. And this, again, this Alcantara wheel is just a fantastic thing to hold. Ride quality is very nice, thanks to a long wheelbase and excellent suspension tuning. Let's see how we are in comfort for a little bit too. Put it. See if the suspension softens up noticeably. It gets a little bit softer, but honestly, I would be fine with just the suspension and dynamic all the time. There's an individual setting where you can go in and set all of your, various parameters to whatever you choose, which is nice. Sensation of speed is a little bit lost on you sometimes. This is a surprisingly fast car when you look down at the speedometer. It is, I think, faster than it feels because of the smoothness of the power delivery. And that is something I will give this car credit for, is that it is fast enough. I don't think it's too quick. Some people have complained that the Porsche Taycan Turbo S is painfully quick and it'll make you sick and make everyone sick. I think this is just the right amount of power. There is just a way that it hides its speed unlike anything else. I think that's partially due to it being electric, and the rest of that is just the refinement from this being a nice Audi. Cruise control is easy enough. It's the traditional cruise control setup that Audi has used for a while. We can set our following distance. I haven't really messed around with that too much this week. I think I really like this e-tron GT because it's about as much of a driver's car as I've seen in the electric car space. But it's also a very luxurious electric car. It really nails the dynamics. It really nails the simplicity. This is not a difficult car to use or learn or live with. There's not necessarily a learning curve here like you get with some other EV offerings, Tesla. And it's just different enough and cool looking enough that I think I'd probably have it over a Porsche Taycan. And again, we haven't had this out on track, haven't really slid it around too much, but I hear that dynamically it may be a little bit better than the Taycan. Anyway, we'll have to have a comparison someday, or have to drive the Taycan someday to really, truly suss that out. But for now, let's see if we can hit some entrance ramps. I've got limited time in this car this week, so this night drive was one of my only opportunities to take it out. There we go. We've got a couple different gauge cluster views. Big speedo, big power meter, small speedo, small power meter. Let's test these carbon ceramics. Super powerful. Really nice brake feel too. Some of the best brake feel I think I've had from carbon ceramic brakes, which is saying something. Yeah, and you can turn everything off. Have a bit of a hoon. A silent hoon. I've got to give it to Audi. They are figuring out how to make a car handle, and handle neutrally with a little bit of a rear bias. This is a rear biased all-wheel drive electric car, and I love it for that. It is so fun to drive at the limit. There's a little bit of understeer on turn-in and through the corner, but you can kind of adjust that on throttle depending on your level of bravery and the conditions and the type of track that you're on. There's really a lot to like here. Really the only thing that I would like more of from this Audi RS e-tron GT is just a bit more regenerative braking, a little bit more off-throttle regen, and having the ability to control that. I mean, that's just kind of a software thing, and I understand Audi's reasoning behind the just the idea of wanting to coast and the level of efficiency from that, but I don't know, something fun about one-pedal driving that I've really enjoyed. You'll never get a sensation for the amount of speed that this thing has on video. It doesn't correspond to the noise that's being put out by the car, and I guess that's just how all electric cars are these days. Zero to 60 and it just doesn't matter. It's so fast. Besides just going into full coast, from full coast to slight deceleration, these paddle shifters almost do nothing. Entrance ramp ruined. No! These auto high beams seem to be working pretty well. That's always fun. Also, for having air suspension, this is one of the most fluidly and just nicest feeling air suspension setups that I've ever driven from the factory. It reminds me a little bit of some very nice, very expensive aftermarket options that you can get. And it's seamless. It works in the background. It raises and lowers the car according to drive modes. You get a little extra ground clearance out of it, but it doesn't feel like a traditional air suspension setup that's floaty. It's just very tight and really well tuned. I don't know who Audi has hired recently in their vehicle dynamics department, but I've driven some very impressive cars from them lately, and this and the RS6 are just, this is next level stuff for Audi in the handling department. It's pretty awesome. There's just so much grip. I don't know if you really need the carbon ceramic brakes, but they are pretty nice. And the brake feel is fantastic. Just fantastic. Driving this is a little bit like driving in a video game. You can shoot gaps that just don't exist in other cars. You just look where you want to go, and your inputs take you there in no time. Again, on the street, as an 8/10ths car, hard to match something like this. At least with an internal combustion engine. see how we like efficiency. Power bleeds on a little bit slower. All the drive modes in this are good. They're all fine. The differences between them are subtle, like they were in the Audi RS6. We have a 93 kilowatt hour battery. Pretty big battery. I think about 85 kilowatt hours of that is actually usable. Besides a little bit of a roar from these Goodyear Performance summer tires, it's very quiet at speed, very little wind noise. A nice level of isolation in here. And even at highway speeds, those numbers just creep up on you like you wouldn't believe. I'm noticing that when you switch drive modes, your amount of regen from the paddles seems to kind of reset. So I'm always just kind of playing around with these paddle shifters. And they are satisfying paddles to push, but I want more from them. This is one of those cars where the level of speed and the performance and the acceleration and everything is just on a completely different level from any other car on the road. It truly is just another dimension of performance. Let's see how we are around this entrance ramp. Just a titch of understeer, just about the perfect amount. And then when you put your foot down, it all becomes neutral and very, very fast. We still don't have a button for the gauge display brightness or the gauge cluster brightness. Something that I'm struggling with finding in every Audi and every Porsche that I drive recently, which I'm not too crazy about, but that's okay. They seem to do auto brightness pretty well. Way that it just stands up on that rear axle and just grips and puts its power down is incredible. Absolutely incredible. I could feel that torque vectoring out of that corner. I mean, it should have just kicked sideways and slid out on me, but it gripped and it really, really put its power down. I would love to get one of these on track someday. Just can't explore the limits like you want to on the street. It's a silent hoon. I can see why Ken Block made the move to go to Audi. You really don't notice the 2-speed rear gearbox in any situations during normal driving. It's just under hard acceleration, that 0 to 60, that launch control, where you feel just a little bit of an interruption in power delivery. Let's do another launch. And it's right at about 60 miles an hour, 55, 60 miles per hour. It's kind of cool, actually. It gives you a little bit of a lurch. It reminds you of a car with an internal combustion engine. All week while I've been driving this, I can't help but shake the feeling that this is one of the least weird or strange or maybe foreign feeling electric cars that I've driven. It feels very normal. It feels very natural. It's almost a familiar place like an internal combustion engine car, but just has a different powertrain. But everything else in here is very Audi and very well done. This is some of Audi's best ergonomics, best infotainment, best level of simplicity with everything. Besides the price tag, this would be a fantastic car to live with on a daily basis. And I think the EPA range rating is vastly underrated. I've done quite a few miles on this drive, and all of them done quite spiritedly, and we've only lost about 30 miles of range. Tesla tends to overestimate, and I think the other manufacturers tend to underestimate, and as a result, we get some funky range numbers. I do really like the steering. It's not as numb as some other steering racks on the market. Might be some of the best electric car steering I've felt. And with this wheel that you can't see right now because of just the darkness, I really do like it a lot. And this is one of the quickest charging electric vehicles on the market, if you can find a fast charger to support it. We have a bunch of different views and screens and data displays in this fully digital cockpit here. We have a trip computer, sport displays, see our tire pressures, lap times, lap statistics. There's a reduced minimalist display, which is kind of cool. You can kind of swipe between your radio or your phone or your navigation. Look at that. While we're just cruising here, let's do a quick sound system test with our sound test playlist. We don't have a volume knob. That is one little inconvenience here with this Audi RS GT. But you do get this little slider that is a touch control piece right down by the shifter right here. And I do really appreciate that even the steering wheel buttons are actual physical buttons, no haptic stuff. They click and they scroll. Alright guys, well, that's going to wrap up my thoughts on this Audi RS e-tron GT. What a name. What a car. This is fun. I am pleasantly surprised by the way this drives, by the way it feels, by the way it looks. I love walking up to this car. The design here is really, truly something special, and Audi's done a really nice job just fine-tuning this car. Excited to see what a Porsche Taycan feels like someday, but for now, if you can stomach the price tag, this is a really pretty cool electric offering. That range number is a little bit disconcerting, but it's also a little bit deceiving, because in reality I think people are doing a little bit better than 232 miles out of a charge. So, you know, and for a car that is maybe not your only car, you do get a full battery every night when you charge it up. Okay, parking brake, seatbelt off, walk away. And you could press the stop start button if you want to. Audi has my favorite lock sound. Very cool. And also you get a little e-tron GT projection under the door. I mean, I feel like that's kind of to be expected these days from just about every fancy car. Alright guys, that's it for this one. Thanks for watching. If you want to see more on this Audi RS e-tron GT, we have videos on the Winding Road Magazine YouTube channel. We'll post a POV day drive where you can hopefully see a little bit more features and details on this car, but until then, I'm gonna go drive this some more. We'll see you guys in the next video. Take care.